Good afternoon. It is afternoon. Welcome to the show. We're on live here, just checking YouTube to see if we're up there yet. Hopefully, it will come up soon. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Real Talk with Mary Grace. It's Monday, the 16th of August, 2021. So much happening right now. Hey, Carrie. My title today is a little bit of irony. Hopefully you guys got that. Good to see you. I've been off for a few days. I've had some work going on at the house. Some of you know that. And so if you've been missing my broadcast, that's why. So come on in. And if you are new here, I'm Mary Grace. This is Real Talk with Mary Grace. And I decided to go live. And let me just post this on Telegram here. Okay. So, just put up the show. Yes, I'm on early, and I I announced last week that I have been having work done here, and my contractor comes later in the day, and it interrupts my broadcast time, and he's been working, later in the evening too. He has another job. So that is why I've been inconsistent in my broadcast. Who knew when we went to when we went into the weekend that we would get to Sunday night and find that an entire nation had surrendered to the Taliban. We're going to get to that. If you're just getting in, you might take notice of my title. And please understand, it's irony. I'm being ironic. So if you're here and you're thinking that I'm not getting what's going on, you're missing it. Okay, let me just ask if you're on Facebook. Please share this. This is not my usual time, and so people aren't looking for the show. It would help if you would share it on your wall, if you would tag people, if you would put it into groups, and then also please make sure that you that you are liking the page, that you're following the page Mary Grace Media, not just the show. That's two different things. When you go to a post on Facebook, you like the post. That's one thing. You click on the name of my channel, Mary Grace Media, and you like and follow the channel. Those are two different things. If you're liking and following my channel, then you will see when things come up on your feed. And then the same goes for YouTube. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you are following. Make sure you're following on my other social media. I am on Twitter, Real Mary Grace 1, and I'm on CloudHub, Mary Grace Media Channel 111. And just a reminder on CloudHub, if you're trying to friend me on CloudHub, the only people that I'm friends with are people that I know personally. And so, but you can follow on CloudHub. So it's a little bit it's kind of like Facebook that way. I don't take friend requests from people that I don't know personally. And that's the way it works. So it's not, don't be insulted if I don't return your friend request. All right. Now, what else? There's a lot going on, and I don't even know where to start. I've been thinking a lot about the recent news. The one thing that I do want to say is absolutely 100% do not take your eyes off of what is going on with the audits. This is critical. It's so important that people understand this, that what is happening in Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania may be on hold, but what is happening right now is critical, because this is things are happening. Like this is not for nothing. The audits are not going to come to nothing. Now, if you're in Arizona, if you're in Maricopa County, they are asking for people to volunteer to do canvassing. And I believe that is what they're going to be validating more votes and voter rolls. So they're going to be going door to door to make sure that people who voted actually are real people, that that they actually live where they say they do, and that they're not dead and or fictitious. So that's important. And so if you're in Maricopa County, it is important that you participate in that. And it says they need them for the next 2 weeks. So I'm imagining that they're organizing the canvassing into time slots. And whatever times you're available, I'm sure that they would that they would take your volunteer efforts. Now, I want to explain a little bit about what is going on with these with the results and what could happen in the event that that these audits return useful information that shows unequivocally that there was tampering and that the numbers that were certified on election day not on election day, on January 6th, that those numbers that were certified for the states could be actually decertified. And that's really one of the possible outcomes of the results that we get from these audits. And so what happens if that takes place? Well, one of the things that could happen, and that is a pretty big likelihood, is that if enough states decertify, for example, Arizona, um, if there's an inaccurate count that comes out, if the fraud is proven, then they would decertify those votes. The electoral votes is what I mean. If they do that, then that would lower the total for Faker 46. Right now, officially, according to the cabal media and the people who certified him, he's at 306. Now, we know that's not true, but it has to be proven. Um, uh, it has to be officially proven that that's not the case. So what happens if a few states decertified? Well, the minute Arizona decertifies, we're in a constitutional crisis. So that's a big deal. Um, but let's say that we get into a situation where we have enough states that decertify that it actually takes Faker 46 down below 270. And then and then if they don't reassign those votes to President Trump, then that would mean that both people are below 270. And I shared this in my Telegram a couple of days ago. Ivan Raiklin is on Telegram, and he's actually been on my show before. And he talks about the, I think it's the 12th Amendment. It's the 12th Amendment, I believe. Hold on a second. Can somebody correct me on that? That's where it goes back and the states vote on it. Let me just double check. I don't want to be inaccurate about that. Um, does anybody remember? Is it the 12th or is it the? Yes, the 12th Amendment. Okay. So he talks about what happens. So in the event, the Constitution actually already has a provision for this. So for those people who are saying that there's no way that this could be changed, that it could go back, and that President Trump could actually be officially recognized and put in place as the president, that's not true. The Constitution allows for this. And again, the reason that the states are doing the audits is because there's more than enough evidence to warrant this. Okay. So what happens if the states, if we have enough states that decertify? Well, at that point, we would have two people, and neither one of them would officially have been would have been declared president. Neither one would have received enough electoral votes. And what happens at that point is that the Constitution, the 12th Amendment, says very clearly that the vote goes back to the House of Representatives, and it gets and then the representatives vote on it. But here's where it gets very interesting, because we have how many, who knows how many people we have in the House of Representatives. I believe it's 435 right now. And it may be off by one or two because things have been fluid. But how many states are represented there? It's 50. And this is very interesting, because the states have to vote by how by what majority they have at the state level. So let me make that clear. So for example, Oklahoma has a state legislature that is Republican. And because of that, the state of Oklahoma has to vote for the Republican candidate according to the 12th Amendment. Does that make sense? And for example, I think Alaska has uh, a Republican legislature. Arizona has a Republican legislature, and every state in the union that has a Republican legislature has to vote for President Trump. And right now, so out of 50, I believe it's 27. Is that right? 27 that are Republican led. And I believe there are 3 that are tied. And then there are another, am I doing my math right? 20 that, hold on a second. 27. Yeah, there are another 20 that are Democrat led. And so it's 37, Ryan, on YouTube. I thought it was 20 Democrat, 3 tied, and 27 Republican. Somebody maybe double check that for me. I haven't said it the other day. I didn't write it down. But the point is, regardless of the number, the Republicans have the majority, and they cannot switch. They're tied to it. They can't change. That's not allowed. So this is not like, let me be clear. This is not like a vote in the Senate where you have a RINO senator voting with the Democrats. They can't do that. So I want to be very clear. The states that are represented in the House of Representatives are bound to vote according to their state legislature majority, non-negotiable. I want to be very clear about that. And that means that Trump is president in that scenario. That scenario is very much on the table. I just want you guys to be clear about that. And so, there are a lot of people who voted for him who really have no idea that this is even a possibility. And I was talking to somebody last week who's in that category, who just, thinks that because the world has recognized the faker, the resident in chief, as the president, that it's a done deal. No, it's not a done deal. It's not a done deal any more than the fact that that when congressmen or senators get elected and then later on they do a recount and they find that the person that was sent to Washington did not actually win, that person gets called back that day as soon as the results come out. And so that's what you have to understand. All right. That's happened. I know, I have a friend who's working with a candidate up in New York that happened to. He won in 2020. He went to Washington for training for the House of Representatives. And then he got called back because lo and behold, they found other votes. Now it's likely that he was part of the stolen election, that he actually really did win. And then they found mystery votes for his his competitor after the fact, and he got called back. He was in DC training to be a congressman with the freshman class. He got called back. So this happens. This happens at the at the Senate and legislative level, at the congressional level all the time. So and apparently, I just want to warn you, if you're watching my broadcast, that according to DHS, the fact that we're having this conversation, it makes me a terrorist, a terror threat, because I'm giving you guys tools, and I'm talking about the Constitution, and I'm showing you what could happen in a constitutional crisis. Apparently, that's the new definition. It's no longer Taliban. It's you and me who care about our Constitution. So, in case you were wondering, how you identify, that's how they define you. And so now, when it comes to that, we're not in a situation where we're relying on the Supreme Court or a judge or somebody like that to make the call. That's not how this works. It's not like in the Senate where you have somebody like Paul Ryan or no name traitor at the last minute who comes in and votes with the Democrats, which is what happened when we were supposed to be reversing the horrible Obamacare policies. That's not how this works. It doesn't work that way. And so that's one possibility. Now, here is something that I wanted you guys to think about. How many of you watched the Cyber Symposium? I was on the day before that, and then I did not broadcast during the symposium. I was hoping that people would be watching that. I didn't want to go live during the symposium, and I also had a contractor here. And so I was dividing my time between that. How many of you watched? How many of you were following? How many of you kept up with the highlights? I want to know uh, who has an idea of what was happening, what went on during the symposium. Okay, so some of you watched, and I'm hearing from people that that people felt as though they didn't get what they were expecting. Is that kind of an understatement? Um, yeah. Well, remember, and I'm talking specifically, I'm reading your comments while I talk, but I'm talking specifically about the packet captures, the PCAPs that Mike Lindell promised. And if you watch the beginning of the symposium, you'll remember that the ballots or that his website was hacked, that there were malicious attacks on the website, that they had technical difficulties on and off throughout the conference, and it was challenging. They also announced that they had identified bad actors at the conference, physically present there. They saw people out in the parking lot giving their badges to people who weren't supposed to be there, and things like that. And so, but one of the things that came out of it, one of the things that came out of it is that the PCAPs didn't materialize. Now, there are people who think that's a bad thing, and that it was sort of a bust because of that. I don't happen to feel that way. I was watching Brian Cates' feed. I was watching Brian Cates' feed on Telegram because he was there and he was sort of giving up to the minute updates of what was happening. And I've told you my feeling about him. He's sort of up and down. He can get very emotional. And as a reporter, I'm not sure that's a good trait to have. In any case, he was giving some good um, just play by play of what was happening. And he started saying on the third day that he was going to leave by 3 o'clock if nothing materialized. So he basically had a little hissy fit because the PCAPs didn't materialize, and he made it sound like they were um, that it was a bust. Okay, well, I was paying attention. I knew that it wasn't a bust. I knew that there were things that were coming out of it that were incredibly useful and valuable. And And so I want to give you a little bit of my analysis, and I want to tell you what I think about what was going on there. Some of you may have already figured it out, but here's a couple things that I think. Well, first of all, one of the big takeaways from that is that we actually assembled representatives from all 50 states to come and look at what happened during the 2020 election, and we were able to get their attention for more than 5 minutes in a text or email. That's a big deal, and I wanna tell you how that was accomplished in just a minute. We also saw with our own eyes the real results of the election. We saw the real numbers. That was on the first day. And then we also found out that there were some infiltrators, and that the team there identified them and caught them. We got an excellent analysis by Professor Clements about an analogy about how votes are trafficked. I thought it was very informative, and so I wanna just break it down for you a little bit and tell you what I think was going on, what I think happened. And and so first of all, I think the PCAPs are important, but they're not the pinnacle of why he had the conference, in spite of everything he said, in spite of everything Mike Lindell said. And I actually love what he did because I read his book, and I know what he was doing. I really encourage you to read his book if you haven't yet. It will give you so much insight into how he is what he's doing and how he's doing it. And it will give you insight into more into the art of war. If you haven't figured it out yet, um, Mike Lindell is an insider. He has information that is coming straight from the president's team. He's privy to that. He was given information. He was given uh, real data on January 9th of this year. Who gave him that? Think about it. Um, and before I go any further with my story, I want you to know that one thing that a lot of people don't know about Mike Lindell is that he met President Trump before Trump became president. A lot of people don't know that, and that President Trump invited him to Trump Tower to meet him. And because some people think that probably the first encounter they had was when Mike Lindell went for the manufacturing summit at the White House. It was a roundtable. That's not true. He was there, he was participating, and of all the people that were there, who was sitting next to the president? It was Mike Lindell. And then after the fact, when he was trying to get evidence to the president from the White Hat hackers, Patrick Burns' team, those guys. Remember that when he went to the White House and he had that note, he had that clipboard, and the media was eavesdropping and looking at his clipboard, and they published what was on it, and he acted like it was a big mistake that he showed that. All that, remember that? And remember how he talked about how he was frustrated and he couldn't get in to see the president, and the story that was coming out of that whole time, the story that was being circulated from Patrick Byrne and General Flynn and even Sidney Powell to some extent, is that President Trump was being insulated, and that his real advisors couldn't get to him, that he was being given really bad advice, and that his inner circle were not on his team, and that he was being snowed. Do you remember all that? It comes into play here, all right? If you don't, if you have forgotten, just in case you've forgotten, um, President Trump is a brilliant strategist, and he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal, which is based on the art of war. And there's a lot of strategy that has been taking place all along that has been put in place not just for those of you who have been following all along, but for normies and also for the enemy. And so it's important to think about those pieces as we see what's unfolding right now. And I want you to go back and think about all those things that happened. Now, those of you who believe that President Trump was, those of you who believe that that President Trump was isolated and alone, and that his advisors weren't getting him the truth and information that he needed, I think you're overlooking one critical thing, and that is that in every single picture that we see, every single meeting that we ever see him in, there's one person in the room that is always with him. And if the narrative that you've been fed about this person, about President Trump being deceived and in the dark were true, then this person would be the biggest traitor of all. Do you guys know who that person is that's always with him, that's never away from him? Always, always, always. In fact, a lot of the pictures that come out of these things are from Dan Scavino, his right-hand man. And so I am of the opinion that there is no scenario whatsoever in which President Trump would be kept in the dark and kept out of the loop about something that this important. And so thinking about all of that, those things, when you think about that, fast forward to the Cyber Symposium, fast forward to the fact that Mike Lindell has been talking about the fact that he got evidence in in January. It's my belief, and there is another broadcaster who's been talking about this as well. His first name is Phil. I shared his broadcast in my Telegram. I don't have his handle right now, but he talked about this too. It's my belief that the president actually that on election night, the president was with his team in the skiff. I mean, that's a fact. That's where he was watching the results. That everything that was done, in other words, the packet captures, was tracked in real time by the president and his team, his closest team, his probably Space Force and others, and that we had it all tracked in real time. And if you've been following me, you know that I was able to confirm that with a trusted source not long after that, that was in fact the case, that the president knew that this was going to happen, all of the digital aspects of everything. I think that he also knew that the paper shenanigans were happening as well. But the digital aspect of this, the digital hijacking, was not only observed by the president in real time, but that it was all recorded and tracked. And so I believe that when we saw those numbers, when we saw those numbers at the Cyber Symposium on the 10th, that the numbers that we saw were the real numbers. And this broadcaster, Phil, stated, can somebody find his name? I can't remember exactly his full handle. I want you guys to see it, though. It was on Rumble. But if I believe that the numbers that we saw on the on the 10th at the Cyber Symposium were legit, the numbers that the president tracked and had in his possession from the very start, that he handed those over to Mike Lindell. That's what I believe. And I had that was one of the pieces that I hadn't exactly put together. So somebody says it's Phil Godlewski. Thank you, Kelly. That was one of the pieces that I hadn't put together. He put that piece together, so I just want to give him a hat tip and tell him thank you for communicating that and articulating it so well. But that was one of the things that I hadn't quite figured out. But I already knew that we had everything. I already knew that one of the things that the president was doing was he was trying to give people the opportunity to come clean and do the right thing. If you recall, he was on a phone call with Brad Raffensperger and or was it Brian Kemp? Which one of those? He was talking about the votes in Georgia, and he kept saying, is that all? Like, is there anything else you want to tell me? Do you want to come clean? He was pretty clear in wanting to give people the chance to do the right thing. And then January 6th came along. They certified the votes. Nobody stopped it. In fact, the insurrection took place right when they were going to bring up the Arizona totals, and that would have led to evidence being shown on public record, on the congressional record, for all the public to see right there on C-SPAN, and that was halted. And then because there was a crisis and there was an insurrection, they just went ahead and they didn't hear any of the evidence from any of the states that were objecting to the electoral votes. So that was a big deal. And so fast forward to January 9th, we find out that Mike Lindell has the evidence. And so I think that that's what brings us up to the symposium. All right. Are you tracking with me? Is everybody tracking with me? Okay, somebody's confirming that it was Raffensperger. Yeah, I think it was that he was on the phone with. So, okay. Now, um, so think about the theater that's been happening this whole time. And think about the fact that on the one hand, I am of the opinion that we are in devolution. And if you're not sure what that means, that is a situation where the president already accounted for the continuity of government because we're at war. And because what happened with the virus was an act of war, we were already in a state of war. And then, of course, the election theft by foreign actors. There I go, being a terrorist again, thinking that somebody might have stolen the election, but that the election theft was an act of war. And so at that point, it would make more than enough sense for the president to put devolution into place, which would mean that trusted high-level military leaders throughout our military would be given the task of keeping the government going, and that would mean actually that President Trump didn't officially step down. And so the Kim Clement prophecy, which is how can there be two presidents? I think you're living it right now. And so what does that mean? It means that there could be a point in which there would be a shift of power, not a shift, that President Trump could actually take his rightful place and that they would use the military to do that. Now, is there another scenario where that wouldn't have to happen technically? I just described it. That would be the 12th Amendment. Now, that gets me to Mike Lindell. What is the one thing that we know for sure has to happen before 2022, before 2024, no matter who runs for office? That is that we have to clean up the elections. It doesn't, like, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter who's running. It doesn't matter how many fundraisers they do. It doesn't matter how far they travel around the country. Our elections are completely gone, captured, never to be trusted again if we don't get this clean up. It has to be cleaned up at the state level. It has to, because states, the Constitution mandates that the states run the elections. Well, how do you do that? The first thing you have to do is you have to get your states on board to do that. Now, think about this. Think about how many states so far have come on board to even to look closely at their election processes. Look at the struggles and the fights that we have had to get even a handful of states involved. I mean, look at the fight in Arizona. Look at what's going on in Georgia. Look at Pennsylvania. Look at the Republicans who have resisted this. Uh, at the state level, at the local level, at the county level, at the city level, this is really a challenge because you have a lot of people who are supposedly Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter, who are resisting even the idea that there was fraud in this election, that there was malfeasance, that there was foul play, that there's problems with the machines, that they're connected to the internet. You have those people, and then you have the people who work in elections offices, who are election officials, who really truly value their integrity and think that they've done the right thing, but they haven't even known. They didn't even know that their machines are capable of being connected to the internet. Okay. Now, Shay on YouTube, you do have a theory that I'm looking at, but I want to stay with my line of thought right now. So we might come back to that. All right. So I want to talk about these state legislatures. I want to talk about state leadership. I want to talk about what happened at the Cyber Symposium because I want you to think about the resistance and the struggle that it's been to get just a few states on board with doing audits, with reforming the way that they run their elections, with even knowing that it needs to happen. So how do you do that if you are how does anybody do that? How does anybody get 50 states to agree on anything, to come to one place to look at anything, to even have an interest in figuring out what's going on or even to be aware that there's a problem? How do you do that? I mean, that's a big deal. Who here has ever tried to call or email their state rep and try to get their attention about a pressing issue, even at the state level? What happens when you do that? They're busy, they have the attention span of a gnat. You get a staffer to answer the phone. They take your information, they take it down, they promise to call, they promise to email. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they're interested, maybe they aren't. But the point is, they're not necessarily gonna respond. And so take this to another level. Take it to the level of Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, having a symposium, and let's just picture what would happen in a traditional situation where you're going to invite people to your symposium. This is how it would go. You would have volunteers who would get on the phones and start sending emails and sending out invitations. So it would go something like this. It would go, okay, like my rep. Um, so so the comments on YouTube are funny. Okay, let's think about Wendy Rogers, right? So she's a senator from Arizona. So you want to invite her. And so you get your volunteers to call her office, and then here's what happens. Office of Senator Wendy Rogers, this is Mindy. Can I help you? And then you say, "Hi, Mindy. This is Mary Grace. I am with Mike Lindell's Cyber Symposium, and I wanted to see if I could get a message through to Senator Rogers." And then here's Mindy. Mindy's like, um, "What? Hold on a second. Who did you say? What did you say your name is? Mary Grace? Who? What sympo? What are you calling about? Can I take a message? Senator Rogers is busy right now." You're never gonna get through. And then there's gonna be some message on a little pink slip on the senator's desk that is gonna say something about some cyber symposium that she's invited to, and she's looked at her calendar and she's like, "Yeah, no. 3 days? Seriously? I have to get on a plane? Are you kidding me? It's COVID. Whatever. I'm not going out there. I'm not doing that." That's not a good example because she was already in Arizona, but let's imagine that you are writing to a rep in Washington State or Pennsylvania or New Hampshire, et cetera, especially a Democrat, right? So so it's not happening. It's a non-starter. You're not going to get anybody to your symposium. It's going to fall flat. You're not going to get the message out. The people who are in these election offices, the people who are state representatives, senators, they're not on social media like we are. There's very few of them. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is one. Wendy Rogers is one. There's a few that are kind of woke and red pilled and they understand how social media works. Most of them, they're not on Telegram. They're not following this. They don't know this is a thing. And so if they get an invitation like that, they're gonna be like, "Yeah, no." And so enter Mike Lindell. What does Mike Lindell do? How does he get these people to a cyber symposium? How do you get anybody to that? Because quite frankly, it sounds boring if you're not a computer person, right? You hear that and you're like, oh, yeah, my son's really into computers. Maybe I'll tell him about that. It looks like something for gamers or hackers or something like that, right? Now, my chat just completely went away. So I don't know if you're tracking with me or if you just so engrossed in the way I'm telling this story that you're not chatting. But so here's Mike Lindell. Now, imagine Mike Lindell going to the media and saying, "Hey, I'm going to have this really cool cyber symposium, and I want to invite people to come out and take a closer look at what happened to the election. And I want to get representatives from all 50 states to come, and I want you to give me free airtime to announce it. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to serve free lunch. Can I get free airtime on your show, Tucker Carlson or Dan Bongino or whoever?" All right. No, they're not giving you airtime. Forget it. I mean, maybe Bannon would. That's it. And so what does he do? He goes all WWE, MMA, and he says, "This is going to be the biggest throwdown in the history of election integrity. I've got the PCAPs. I'm going to show the whole world that the election was stolen. I'm going to show the whole world that we've got all of the evidence." And he's literally going in full promo mode, getting the attention of the whole world. "I want over 1 billion people watching this. It's going to be on frankspeech.com. Yes, on the 10th through the 11th through the 12th in South Dakota. It's going to be the biggest throwdown in the history of elections. Everybody get all of your state reps. Call your friends on the Supreme Court. Tell them they're going to vote 9-0. There's going to be no way they're going to be able to deny that this election was stolen. We're going to show the PCAPs. Oh, and one more thing. I'm giving a $5 million prize to the person that can prove to me that this did not happen. Come to South Dakota." All right, so now he's got your attention, right? That's what he was doing. How do you herd cats? You bring out the tuna. All right, so you get it? That's what happened. That's one of the strategies that he used to get them there. Am I saying that he didn't have the PCAPs? I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But how do you get these people to pay attention for 5 minutes to get them in the ring to look at what was going on? That's how you do it. He knows how to do it. And this is why, again, if you haven't read his book, you need to understand that this man knows how to beat the house. He knows how this works. He knows this how the game works. He knows how to get people's attention. That is what he does. And you think about it. Think about it. The one person that could have accomplished that on the world stage prior to the 20th of January was Donald Trump. Absolute consummate showman. All right. He could have gotten everybody there. Who is a surrogate that did it in his place? Who's out there telling everybody, "Get to South Dakota"? Mike Lindell. Have you guys not have you put this together yet? Have you put this together? Do you understand now why do you understand why the president has completely distanced himself from the symposium, from Mike Lindell, from the people that are some of the power players here that we think are that the media wants to tell you are cuckoo and insane? Think about it. This is war. This is part of it is the fog of war, but this is the art of war. You send out the crazy pillow guy. He's going to get their attention. He knows how to get airtime. Have you noticed how many times President Trump has said when he did have Mike Lindell, like when he had him in the Rose Garden, he said he has complimented him and said, I need you buying my airtime. I mean, this guy knows how to get people's attention. I mean, he's like, who does what Mike Lindell does? Like, who goes on TV and says, "I'm interrupting this commercial to tell you that we've got the biggest sale on sheets." Like, who does that? I'm interrupting this commercial. But it works because it's so cheesy and he knows how to get the attention. The other thing that I never want you to forget is that Mike Lindell he was a professional card counter. He's very calculated and he knows when he was card counting, um, he described it as a business, not a gamble. That when you're card counting, you go to the casino with 100% intention. You go with a business plan in your head of what dealer you need to sit at, what table, what casino, how many hands you need to play, how many hours you need to play, how many minutes you can take to go to the bathroom. Everything calculated to the minute, and you know how much money you're going to walk away with. This is a skill set that Mike Lindell developed over the last 30 years, being a card counter. And this is a skill that not many people have. One of the things that he was able to do was to beat the house. How many people can do that? He was able to do it because he developed a persona. He developed the ability to sit at a blackjack table and make even the most seasoned casino managers think that he was drunk and that he was going to lose money and that they could keep plying him with comps to keep him at the table because they knew they had a whale who was going to walk away with nothing. That is the skill that he developed. Now, translate that to how he has been presenting himself over the last 9 months as the pillow guy who's, I'm telling you, I've got the evidence. I'm telling you, the president's going to be back in office, da da da, all that, all that. All right. So there are people who think he's crazy, crazy like a fox. The same people who told you that President Trump is crazy, same people, he has them fooled again. Now, we know now that that is one of the things that he did. It was really important to get all those people there to wake them up. Wendy Rogers now has an election integrity caucus that she started, and she was able to meet with and network with those people who came from all 50 states. Amazing, amazing, unbelievable that that was able to be done. But here's the other thing. There's something about people in the computer world, gamers, hackers, like cyber geeks, people that really, really know their stuff. I've noticed this in other professions too, but in this arena, there are massive, massive egos involved. And let's go again to Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell understands egos. He has sat at high roller gambling tables for years and years and years. He knows he can read people. He understands how the human ego works. And one of the things that he understands, he's like, I'm not a cyber guy. I'm not a cyber guy, but I'm a numbers guy. I'm this, that, whatever. And so, but one thing he knows is that people with egos can't resist a challenge, especially criminals. A criminal has a hard time not returning to the scene of their crime. They have a hard time not being enticed into the next heist. And when it comes to cyber criminals, when it comes to cyber criminals who actually think that they got away with something, imagine if you are one of those hackers, if you are one of those people that was involved in programming machines for a certain company. And if you hear somebody like Mike Lindell who says, I'm not a cyber guy, I don't really know how this works, but I got the PCAPs, come and see them, right? Imagine you're one of those guys and you got that dangled in front of you. You're going to show up. You're going to show up, you're going to try to hack in, you're going to and you're going to be so cocky and so confident that you're probably going to make a mistake. This is just my interpretation of what happened, but I think it's a big part of what happened. I think he lured them in. I think they got not just him, but he was the bait and the PCAPs were the bait. I think that he and his team lured in a lot of bad actors who have been underground until now. And I think that we were able to identify more. And I think that his red team, that the so-called red team, uh, was the visible team that he had, but I think that there was I think that there was a I don't know, we'll call them the X team that nobody actually knew existed that were the real red team that were tracking what was going on. Just like on the night of the election when all of that data was tracked, that it was being done in real time. So those people, those egos that were challenged, that couldn't resist the challenge, I believe that we drew them like flies to honey, that Mike Lindell was able to do that, that he was able to flush out some more of the bad actors. And again, this is just my opinion. These are just things that I've extrapolated based on what I've been observing over the past 9 months. And you can take it with a grain of salt. You can take it any way you want. That's just what I think has been going on, and I believe that the Cyber Symposium was incredibly valuable, and obviously, the bad actors who thought that they were the only ones who knew the real totals before they stopped the count on election night, obviously, they were watching too, and they saw that Mike Lindell had the goods. He didn't need to unveil the packet captures because he already showed the whole world, these are the real numbers, and you know it and I know it. That's what happened. And so in light of that, in light of the fact that all of that came out and that the Arizona audit is almost finished, that we know that there's a lot happening in Wisconsin. We know that the 12th Amendment is a decent likelihood of that happening. In light of the news that's come out about devolution, those kinds of things, does it surprise you that the incompetent resident in chief just literally allowed the Taliban to walk into Afghanistan and take over that country without firing a shot? Does that surprise you that we wake up on a Monday morning to drama in Afghanistan and to the fact that we just left it wide open. We just left the back door wide open. We left the front door wide open and said, "Just come in and take it." So what's dominating the news cycle right now? It's that. That's what's dominating. Nothing about the border, nothing about the election, nothing about the audits. I mean, you guys know the playbook by now. You know the playbook. You knew that something was going to happen. Now, this is big. This is probably one of the worst, the biggest foreign policy failures in 30 years. I mean, it's crazy. This is this is insane. And, anybody who's been paying attention even just a little bit could predict everything that's happened. I mean, the latest thing is that now they're talking about airlifting 30,000 refugees, and where are they gonna bring them? Oh, yeah, to America. It's not like they can bring them over to Dubai, right, or Pakistan, or, like, right next door. No, they've got to airlift them all the way across, the ocean, all the way to North America, to a completely different culture, um, and plunk them down in the middle of your communities. Meanwhile, yesterday and the day before, the embassy rolls up the flag and they issue a shelter in place warning to American citizens in on the ground in Kabul and in Afghanistan. Hey, don't bother coming in. The situation is dire. We can't get you out. And then 24 hours later, "Oh, yeah, but we're bringing 30,000 refugees. We got that covered. Somehow we can safely get those people out, but we can't get you." That's the message to Americans from this administration. What? Yeah. Of course, it's yeah. Now, Um, it's crazy, and I'm thinking about what happened la by the way, Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton's office has actually put out a statement and said that if you are an American or you know any Americans in that country, in Afghanistan, and you can get in touch with them, that they should contact his office, and he put a number he put it on Twitter. Tom Cotton, senator, I believe, from Arkansas. Uh, so just be aware of that if anybody does know of somebody who's in country and needs to get out. That's the job of the, State Department. That's the job of the State Department of what's his name? Blinken. He blinked, and the country fell to the Taliban. We know that it was handed over, right? You know that. It didn't just happen organically any more than Benghazi happened organically. This is Benghazi on steroids. And so, uh, it was just last week that Faker 46 there said, "There's no circumstance under which we will have helicopters evacuating people off the roof of the embassy in Kabul." Oh, really? He should resign. I mean, I don't know if you can resign from a position that you don't legally hold, but he should. He should resign. This is just absolute insanity what's happening right now. And, yeah. I mean, he's supposed to come on at 3:45. So President Trump has issued more statements on the situation in Afghanistan in the past, um, in the past in the past 3 hours than Faker 46 has issued in the past week. So, at least one president is paying attention to what's going on, and it's the right one. But I mean, it just I know we're gonna talk more about this in the coming days, but again, absolutely make sure that you do not lose sight of what's going on in these audits. Because the truth is there's one of two things going on over there in Afghanistan. One is that they're just laying down and that China is in charge, that they're using the Taliban to get access and to get control of that country because there are trillions of dollars worth of mineral deposits in the country. The other option is that the military industrial complex has sold our men and women in uniform out yet again to send them over into the killing fields of Afghanistan to guard like God knows what. I guess the CIA's poppy fields are about to get ripe and they need to send somebody over there to guard it. I don't know. I don't know, but you know and I know that there's nothing organic about what happened. And, when you think about insurrection, you look at the picture of the Taliban leaders sitting at the president's desk in Afghanistan in the presidential palace. That's actually what an insurrection looks like. But yeah, there is a lot going on. Now, um, the, uh, the one thing that I did wanna say is Seth Keshel had a really good, um yeah, poppy fields, on Ashley on YouTube, poppy equals opium, same thing. That's how you get it. Now, there was Seth Keshel wrote a very good piece on his Telegram. It was very long, but he wrote about his time in country in Afghanistan, and I thought that it was very well put. And he mentioned a book that he read that really, there were a couple of books he read. One was Counterinsurgency in Modern Warfare by Marston and Malkasian, Malkasian. Counterinsurgency in Modern Warfare. That is what convinced him that we weren't there to win, that it was impossible to win. And then he read a book by uh, Ron Paul, and which was Liberty Defined. And so those are books that were pivotal in shaping Seth Keshel's view of what's actually happening in that part of the world. Now, if you want to get a little bit more of a primer on the actual history of that part of the world, I suggest that there is a book on that you can get called The Great Game by a writer called Peter Hopkirk, Hopkirk. You can get it on Amazon. That book delves into the history of that region, including the vast terrain between between Russia and the UK and Afghanistan, the Silk Road, the history of that area. It just gives you an understanding of the tribal aspect of the area, but also the resources that have been the target of imperialist nations for quite some time. And so that's and the Great Game is actually the name, the historic name for the fight between the Russians and the British to conquer that area. So that's something that you might want to look at. And then there's also another writer from the early 20th century by the name of Peter Fleming. If you guys have ever heard of Ian Fleming, it was Peter was his older brother, and he was a he served in the British Army, I think, and he was also a journalist. He was like an undercover journalist who traveled quite a bit undercover between well, from the UK, but also along where the Trans-Siberian Railroad goes, all through that area, like all the way from Russia, all the way through Mongolia over into China. And he has a lot of insight about the Orient, about what was going on during that time. Now, the both of these writers are British, so you have to take that with a grain of salt because you're going to get that British colonialist, imperialist slant because these were, I don't know if they were Oxford or Cambridge educated, but you get the point. These are British writers, and you have to have that perspective when you read their work. Now, I actually happen to enjoy the work of Peter Fleming. I thought he was a brilliant writer. He has a good sense of humor. And so you might actually like that. But I'm just saying, if you want to take some time to delve into a little more of the history of that area and to understand why it's actually not our fight, that might be useful to do. And then the books that Seth Keshel mentions as well that are written from a more modern perspective. So I do recommend that. Now, let me take a drink of water. Okay, how are we doing? How's everybody tracking here? It looks like we have a good amount of viewers right now. So what time is it? 2:33. Okay. Now, one of the things that I wanted to say. All right, are you guys good with Afghanistan? Do I need to say anything else about that right now? There's breaking news coming out like every minute from that area. But again, keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your eyes um, on what's really happening, on the fact that we have a real president who is paying attention to all of this, and the fact that what is happening over there is not the end of the world. It's a mess. Don't get me wrong. It's a big mess, and everybody should be angry. Everybody who has had family or friends who have gone over there and sacrificed life and limb to protect uh, to protect that piece of sand, to leave our blood on the sand. This is something that President Trump talks about a lot. He says, we can do this without leaving blood on the sand, and it's obvious that we're looking at two completely different focuses when it comes to negotiation. But what I do want to say is that my heart goes out to people who to the military families who for the past 20 years have sacrificed, have lived without their loved ones who've been deployed in that area, um, to those Gold Star families, the widows, the widowers who lost loved ones in this ridiculous, endless war that we never should have taken part in. To those of you who have sacrificed your mental health, your physical health, even parts of your body to protect and preserve freedom and to try to mount a counterinsurgency in what really is a hopeless situation. I just want to say thank you. And I want to say, on behalf of Americans who love this country, that your sacrifice is not forgotten, that we love you and we support you, and we are deeply, deeply sorry that you were used in the way that you were in this situation in Afghanistan. I do want to say that, and I want to know I want you to know that many, many, many of my listeners feel the same way. So you are not forgotten, and our hearts are hurting with you and for you because of the sacrifice that was absolutely needless. So I just want to make sure people know that and understand it. Okay. Now, um, what else did I want to talk about? Okay, here we go. Now, uh, yeah, please pray for these families. I mean, this is like a kick in the teeth, you know, to have them just walk away, and everything that they fought for, everything they sacrificed for. Like, here you go. Here's the keys, Taliban. Try not to wreck it. Yeah, that's what they did. It's heartbreaking. That to me, that's the biggest heartbreak of all of this. Now, um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this. Ah, I I've been thinking about, you know, trying to wake people up. And I feel like on some level there are a lot more people awake than not. And I think that there are people among us, there are leaders, there are influencers who feel like we need to get the majority awake. That we need to get the majority awake before anything can be shifted, before our president can return, before we can expose the crimes, etc. Um, I I was of that opinion to a degree for a while, but I don't feel that way anymore, and I'll tell you why. Because I realized I realized last week in an encounter that I had, I realized that for a lot of people, it doesn't matter how much I tell them, how many links I send them, how many, examples I give them. I could explain the whole 12th Amendment to them in detail and, explain what could happen, and they still wouldn't get it. Um, and I know that our favorite letter of the alphabet has said, sometimes you just have to show people. And on the one hand, we are showing them, they're seeing with their eyes certain things that are happening, like with lockdowns and a lot of the tyranny that's happening. But the truth is, you know, some of these people actually don't think that's a bad thing. Like, they don't think that it's a bad thing to tell somebody to show your papers before you go into a restaurant. I know, crazy, insane. That's the way it is. So I've been thinking that we needed to kind of get these people a little further along. Well, I'm changing my thoughts about this because if you look at, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point, and he said that in any effort to enact change, all you need is like a 15%. You need about 15% momentum or agreement in order to get people to move in a certain direction. Now, I'm pretty sure that we're beyond 15%. Now, Diane on YouTube is saying that only 3% of the colonists were on board with the revolution. Exactly. Isn't it crazy how like we are just inundated with information, but people are stupider than ever, I think, in spite of having access to all the information. But I digress. Now, going back to the tipping point. So the tipping point is when you get to a certain amount of saturation in belief or momentum or activity that takes people in a different direction. That takes, and we're talking on an organizational mass basis. All right. And so, for example, when it has to be when you're dealing with like healthcare, one of the reasons that uh, one of the reasons that that you that chiropractors have such a hard time getting paid by insurance is because I might get dinged for this, but the AMA has a massive amount of control over billing and insurance, and they have a vested interest in keeping people sick and in keeping people medicated and going into allopathic care situations, traditional Western medicine that just treats symptoms. Chiropractors are actually getting to the root of symptoms and they're helping people to become healthier. And so when a chiropractor bills past a certain amount, they get shut down and the AMA puts the throttle on. And in many cases, Medicare will actually reverse the charges. And so the chiropractor gets, a slap on the wrist, or even worse, they get charged. And the reason, and that's usually when they get to about like when they're billing past a certain amount, because the AMA knows that if more than about 15% of the population becomes aware of the benefits of chiropractic, regenerative medicine, non-traditional, non-Western methods of healing and regeneration and immunity, that it's going to affect the population. It's going to create like a landslide of awareness. That's why they do that. And that's there's a book called The Death of Modern Healthcare by Mike Carberry where he describes that. But if you get that concept, you'll understand that it's not going to take a it's not going to take all of the population to be shifting before we can have a big reveal. I don't think. I'm of the belief at this point that we really just need that sort of tipping point. And I believe that we're actually going to get some of those people to that tipping point if they get a big reveal. In other words, I don't even think we can wait for them to catch up. I think we just have to forge ahead. And if you're listening to me, President Trump, I think you just need to go for it. I think that, yeah, we just can't wait. I mean, I talked to somebody today who was absolutely in a panic because I came around them. I came near them with a shield on, which I usually don't wear at all, but I wore it for an appointment because I knew that because like technically they wanted me to show proof of the jab, and I wouldn't do it. And so when I showed up with a with the little shield on and not a mask, literally this person was terrified. And it was very sad to see. Literally, I thought they were gonna have a panic attack. And I was just saying, I just said, "Look, there's documentation. I can show you." I made a decision based on informed consent with my doctor about what it was best for me. And then he said, "Well, I'm not interested." I said, "I can send you information." And he said, "Well, I'm not interested in your opinion." I said, "This is not an opinion. This is documentation from doctors who have treated COVID patients." Um, but they can't he couldn't hear me. He was so terrified. And and then he said, "Well, I I just hope you don't get COVID." I said, "If I do, I'll get treated and I'll recover because it's 100% treatable. But I refused to back down. But it was just sad because, they just he couldn't hear me. And this is a person with an advanced degree, I mean, but the fear is what they've used to control people. You can control people when you hit them with fear and you strike them in the part of their brain that can reason and use logic. It's like he completely lost the ability to use logic. He literally he didn't want to hear what I had to say. Couldn't. Had no ability to do it. And so for that reason, um, I I think we just need to move on. We need to move on. These people can catch up. Uh, they got to catch up. We can't wait for them. What do you guys think? Um, I believe that we are in a third great awakening. So many people have come to Jesus literally since this all started. Um, Thank you, Carrie G on YouTube. Yeah, we just got to move ahead. Got to move ahead. Now that said, there's one thing that I wanted people to know. I haven't talked about superfoods in a while, but it's important to remember that you got to take care of your health. You got to put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't go around putting crap in your body, crap in your mind, and expect to resist disease, right? You have to take care of yourself. That's why I'm a big proponent for superfoods. And for those of you who are new, I have a company. I have an organic green superfoods company that delivers the best superfoods on the planet right to your door. And it's very easy. You can use it for day to day nutrition, meal replacements. You can use it for prepping. There's one product that we have that is going to be going to be very helpful to some people, especially if you have had heavy metal contamination. Now, a lot of people have that just from getting metal fillings. And so if that's you, this is something you might want to look at. But also if you've been around somebody who has had the jab, or if you yourself have had it, maybe you made that decision without having all the information. Whatever, there's no judgment, but we have something called fulvic zeolite, which is it's like in a drop form, and you can take it daily, and it actually helps your body detox heavy metals. There are some other things that we have as well, but the superfoods themselves are just absolutely tremendous. That's going to help you just get your body to a good nutritional baseline to restore gut health, to restore mental clarity. All of these things are an outcome of getting superfoods into your body. And then I recommend highly that you add fulvic zeolite to your routine. Even if you can't afford the entire superfoods regimen, which is really not that expensive. It's about if you like $5 a day for a daily one meal replacement plus your protein. It's pretty good. The fulvic zeolite is amazing. If you write to me, info@marygracemedia.com, I will give you a promo code so that you can purchase just the fulvic zeolite, or you can purchase the entire 30-day transformation, and I'll add a link to the zeolite as well. So you'll actually save well over $100 off that order. It's about 25% off of retail. It's a great deal. I'm going to be on Steel Truth tomorrow night talking about this. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the immune system. We're going to be talking about superfoods. So make sure you tune in at 9 o'clock, steeltruth.com. I will be on there. We'll be talking about superfoods. So just wanted to let you know that there are some solutions out there. And Dr. Zelenko is also saying that people should be prophylactically using a protocol that he recommends. Um, and that is on his website, but it was also on an interview that he did with Stu Peters on what is Stu Peters' website, redvoicemedia.com. He did a a really good interview yesterday, talked about that. But it is important that people take care of their health. If you're looking at adding supplements, you're looking at, just increasing your zinc intake, increasing your ACE, um, and your nutrition. Send me an email, info@marygracemedia.com, because what we have is all real food, and it's all made in the US. You do not want to be buying cheap supplements that are made in China. Um, God only knows what's in them. When it comes to your supplements, you want them to be as high quality, if not higher, than the food that you put into your body. You want them to be bioavailable, made with real food. And that's what our superfoods are. Our superfoods aren't all supplements. We do have some supplements that will help you in your quest for more health. So if you're already a customer and you're trying to figure out how to get that, write to me, info@marygracemedia.com, and I will direct you to how to get that. Okay? Somebody on Facebook is saying, um, about the antibodies. So apparently it's not giving you antibodies. Oh, by the way, the latest numbers to come out for the effectiveness of the jab, 46% effective. So logically, if I'm going to, if there's a chance that I might get something that has a 99.95% recovery rate that's 100% treatable, why would I take an injection that has a 46% effectiveness rate? This is the problem in dealing with people who are scared because they can't they can't even compute that. It doesn't even like register in their brain. Crazy, huh? Yeah. So, all right. I've been on a long time. Millie said something about the fact that I wasn't rushed. Yeah, this is this is better than trying to do this between 5:30 and 6:30, that's for sure, without having to go take care of my dad. I think everybody's napping right now. I took my dad out this morning, and Barley, the cat, was a little bit wild today, but I think they're all napping now. Um Yes, Vicky on YouTube has a very good point. Get your vitamin D levels up before the flu season. Sometimes you have to ask to have that checked. That's absolutely true. We do have our superfoods. We have a zinc with an A, D, and E complex that you can take. In some cases, you might actually have to take higher levels. That's really important. There is a really tremendous need for people to be on vitamin D, especially if you are Black or Hispanic, because your skin doesn't actually absorb the sun as much. The melanin in your skin prevents you from absorbing vitamin D. And so the doctors who understand this say that Blacks in particular, no matter what climate you live in, are almost all vitamin D deficient. And isn't it interesting that COVID and certain conditions disproportionately affect Blacks? Because they're vitamin D deficient. I'm not a doctor, but I've talked to doctors who've explained that. I think that Dr. Brian Ardis explains that, also Dr. Bartlett, maybe Dr. Peter McCullough, but there are several doctors out there who are talking about this. Gino said in Minnesota, we take 10,000 IU vitamin D in the winter. Yeah, I would almost take it all year. All right. Um, Laura on Facebook, I take supplements and blood labs said I was deficient with D. Laura, that could be, it depends on where you're getting your supplements. Like I said, they're not all created equal. So think about that. Anne on YouTube, love the zinc. It's the only brand that doesn't make me sick. That's because, okay, Laura, Anne is talking about our zinc that we have with my superfoods company. The reason, one of the reasons, and then Dino is saying the doctor said your diet affects vitamin D absorption levels. Yeah. So one of the reasons that you want that you want to make sure that your vitamins, that your zinc, that your supplements are coming from a company like mine, is that you wanna make sure that it's made that it's processed in such a way that's bioavailable, that your body can absorb, that it's not damaged before it gets into your body, and that it's not gonna cause more damage to your body. Did you know that a lot of the vitamins that you get over the counter, in, like, the drugstore, a lot of them are the reason that they're so cheap is that they are processed at a very high rate of speed. So in the little pill makers, they process them so quickly that it generates heat. And when the heat is generated, it actually breaks open the molecules and produces oils that then turn rancid. And one of the things that I found out when I went to our factory out in California is we saw them actually making the some of the pills and capsules, and we have a machine that's really old, and we're not replacing it because it goes slower, and it's like the equivalent of cold pressing oils. It doesn't heat up the oils in the vitamins, in the minerals, in the supplements that we have, and so it prevents you from getting a rancid product. That's just something to think about. That's a little detail that I was privy to when I saw that. Yeah, somebody on YouTube says similar to cold pressed. Exactly. It is. That's what's happening. So when you're getting foods from us, when you're getting supplements from my superfoods company, you are getting products not only that exceed the highest organic standards in the country, but that are cold pressed, cold dehydrated. So our greens are living food because they are dehydrated, they're live dehydrated. That's really key. That's what makes it so nutritionally available to your body. All right. Um, so that's just a little education about why I'm so passionate about superfoods and why I hope that you are going to take a look at it, especially going into this season, especially with the variants coming out. People are getting sick, and there was a time in history before they created a virus with a massive PR campaign when people just would have thought, wow, there's a really bad flu thing going around. And, so and so ended up in the hospital and I better take more vitamin D. I better take better care of myself. Nobody was freaking out because it didn't have a scary name with a massive PR campaign. That's the difference. Um, okay, so I think that's it for today. You guys have gotten a good 90 minutes of Mary Grace Live. I'm going to keep my schedule loose this week because of the work that I have happening here. I know that this is not the ideal time for some people, but maybe for others it's great. So we'll see what happens with that. I actually enjoyed doing the show today because I didn't have the pressure to be rushed onto something else. Um, but yeah, we're gonna see. We'll just see what happens. Like I said, if you missed the announcement, I have work happening here at the house. It's happening after hours, after the typical work day in the evenings, and so the contractor has been in and out, and that is why I've been off my schedule. All right. So just keep track, turn on notifications, subscribe, make sure that you check my channel. I do leave my replays up. I can't guarantee that I won't get dinged on this replay because I talked about some stuff that might have made the socialist media overlords big mad. I don't know. So if you want to download it to watch later, you can. It's up to you. Uh, but we'll just see what happens. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you again for liking this. If you come after the fact, please leave a comment. Please make sure that you leave a comment on YouTube, in the feed, in the comment section. Same thing on Facebook, and that helps the broadcast show up in other people's feeds. Also, if you like my page, then you're not going to miss it. All right, so everybody have a great afternoon, and, um, everybody have a great afternoon, and I will be back this week. I just don't know when. How's that? Fair enough. But I will be on Steel Truth tomorrow night, steeltruth.com. It's gonna be, like, in the 9 o'clock hour Eastern, 9 PM Eastern. Everybody have a great evening. Take care.